Hey, it's Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and today we're setting up electric fences. Many different types of fences, and even when you jump into electric fencing, there are many different types of ways of doing it, different types of materials, and I'll show you what we use and what we've been using over the last 35 or 40 years. I remember fencing in the area of the farm that we're in for cattle. I'm assuming I was 8 or 10 years old. In fact, I remember just running through these woods here with a handful of tadpoles when I was, gosh, I couldn't have been more than 6 or 8. And I was trying to find our old 1978 Datsun that my dad drove out to the farm. He was working on fences and I was out running around here playing in the woods and getting water. And my dad thought I was lost. And in fact, there's a large, deep pond about 300 or 400 yards right off Dowdle Road over here. And my dad was a little concerned that I had fallen in it. But as a kid, I'd run around the farm, and there are 180 acres in this section of the farm. And my dad just didn't know where I was going. Anyway, that's what you get for being a kid running around a farm. First of all, we use high tensile electric fencing. We use 12.5 gauge steel wire. It comes in a 4,000 foot spool. They call it a 100-pound roll at our local co-op, and it may weigh every bit of 100 pounds, I'm not sure. But we use high tensile 12.5 gauge steel wire for all of our perimeter fencing, and that's what we're setting up for permanent fencing for our pigs. I'll come back to that in a moment, but last summer and fall of 2021, I started setting up this 9-acre block of woods here with fencing for pigs. And I had pigs in this paddock last fall as the acorns fell. We harvested those pigs in October 6th actually. Started setting up more paddocks in this 9-acre block. And we had problems with the tractor, and then it got too wet and got the tractor stuck and nearly got our backhoe stuck. It was not stuck, it was just detained for about 7.5 hours. You never really get truly stuck on a farm. Sometimes you do. But, so, we've finished setting up the perimeter fencing on this paddock. We have some cross fencing to do, but there's 40 acres just behind the camera here. It's a 40-acre block that has some pines and hardwoods. The pines are not, they were not planted. They were clear cut about 35 years ago or so, and then just left. My dad didn't have the money to replant them. He had just bought the farm and had a bunch of young kids. And anyway, so what grew up were pines and then a bunch of different hardwoods as well. In that 40-acre block that we have here, we'll be fencing it in as well. There's some drainage ditches and other stuff that we need to fence around, but that's a little bit higher ground. This area right here will actually flood for short periods of time in the winter. So we can't just leave the pigs here all the time in this 9-acre block, even if we set up individual paddocks. In the winter, they'll need to get out of the water into some dry ground. So that's kind of, I hope that helps you. So I hope that kind of helps you connect with some of our previous YouTube videos from a year or so ago. I'll try to link that in the video if I can figure out how to do that. But, so that's what we're doing, is erecting more of this high tensile electric fencing so that the paddock rotations just go very, very smoothly. So I'm designing this fence for two purposes: to keep cattle out and to keep pigs in. This line here that's about waist high is strictly for the cattle. Really, I don't not mind if the cattle come in here, and we may push them in here for a day or so with 50, 60, 70, 80 head. in all of this 40 acres to help reduce the browse. Can't do that for very long. They won't get a whole lot of nutrition for it, but it is a possibility that we'll do that. But the main reason for having this line is to keep the cows out. Cows can tear up an electric fence if it's low down for the pigs. So this top line is just for the cows. The next cross fence is actually, I was not thinking when I set it up, but it is set up for cows as well. But the subsequent paddocks will have just these two lines here for the pigs. The bottom line is roughly about 7 or 8 inches off the ground. The ground height varies, so in some places it's 2 inches off the ground, and in some places it's closer to about 10 or 12 inches. For the younger pigs that we have in the 40 to 50 pound range, it's okay. And then it's about 8 inches above that is where the second line is. I just used, on these T-posts, I just set it on the 3rd rung. For larger pigs, I could go up even higher, but this works for the smaller pigs. And it's not a real big deal to change the height of this line, but that's essentially what I use for designing the fences for pigs. For cattle, a single strand about waist high is what we use for cross fencing. For our perimeter fencing, I'll try to insert a brief clip that describes that, but we use 3 wires for our perimeter fencing, and they start about halfway between my chest and my belly button, so it'd be just a tad higher. We'd have a line here, and then we'd have a line here as well for the cattle. For perimeter fencing, some of our cross fencing, so to cross individual, to cut the larger pastures into smaller paddocks so that we can rotationally graze them a little bit easier. We have 2 strands of high tensile wire from some of our oldest, but we've really found that 1 strand about this high keeps the cattle out of the other paddocks. Sometimes the younger calves will go right under and they'll graze a little bit. They don't do a whole lot of damage to the other paddocks, but they're trying to grow faster, and so really if they get a little bit of the first grazings off the best grasses, it's not a big deal if they go under. The problem with this is if the cattle are pressured at all, whether they're dogs chasing them, whether you're kind of moving them, shoeing them with a 4-wheeler or whatever else, the cattle can jump clear over this waist-high electric fence. They look like deer doing that, and it doesn't matter if the cattle are a full cow that's 1,000, 1,200 pounds in fat, if she's scrawny, or if it's just a 600 or 700 pound steer. They typically do not jump over the 600 or 700 pound animals, but they can. But the oldest brood cows know how to jump over the fence, and if they're pushed, they will jump over that fence. So that's why we use that slightly higher ring and 3 strands for our perimeter fencing. So this is the perimeter fencing that we use at Diddle Family Farms. This is for cattle. It's a 3-wire. All lines are hot. It's got a 3-wire electric fence. The top line is set a little above belly button height on me, about halfway between my belly button and chest. The second line is about waist high, and the third line is about knee high. So we'll end the video here, but this is just kind of the overview of how we're designing the electric fences. So look for our next videos about other different aspects of the electric